we've had a very nice day so far. We had a commendation ceremony over at Colt that we all just meandered over from, if that's a way to say it. And we are going to go into public session. After this meeting, we'll go into exec session because we didn't do it before, because we were celebrating excellence in the district, Dr. Brown, and good work from staff, students, 10 years that were awarded. So we will go ahead with our public agenda, and I am looking at modification of agenda. Brad.
I have one item on the personnel report. I'd like to, let's see, withdraw Roman numeral 10 from the personnel report. It happens to be the ninth item, but Roman 10. We skipped Roman, I'm not sure why.
So Brad, we're going to...
I'm just asking you to withdraw that in its entirety. We can deal with it in another meeting.
Right, so we're going to pull that for today.
Yes. Yep. That's
Right, exactly.
Yep.
Okay. And we will address any issues regarding item number 10 at another point or later today.
Yes.
But then any vote will be at another meeting at a future date. All right?
correct.
Very good. And the rest of the personnel report is will be on the consent agenda as displayed on your handy dandy iPads. And I don't know if you spent. I have an iPad though, so it's kind of buried under paper. But I think that's not really the idea. I'm not sure what that means. Okay. So thank you. Any other modifications? Not seeing any. So we'll go ahead and receiving and hearing delegations, public and staff. There are a few folks signed up. Corinne.
Hello. Hi. So I'm Corinne Franz, and I'm here speaking as a parent of 3 children who are in the Ithaca City School District. I also just want to make it very clear that I am not presenting any official history of the modified and JV hockey programs. I'm also not representing anybody. I am just going to speak as a parent. And I am a parent who has a senior who is currently on the high school varsity hockey team, but who 5 years ago was one of the inaugural members of the first attempt to create what was a school-based hockey training program. And I am also the mother of a 8th grader who, for the first time, is also now involved in what we are calling the modified hockey program. Okay, so why I'm here is because it came to my attention that there is some poor communication and misunderstandings about what this program actually is, and that there are parents who have thought that this is an ICSD sanctioned program. I myself am a parent who, when I heard, oh, modified and JV programs need to get the form into the nurse, I took my form to the nurse, only to find out that, in fact, it's not necessarily related to ICSD in a direct sanctioned way. But I do want to talk a little about the history, because many of the board members here were not there at this time.
Is this a short history?
I'm going to try very hard. Please give me a few extra minutes. Okay. So basically, 4 years ago, we did approach the board at the time because there were about 20 modified aged kids who were being trained professionally at the rink, who were not in a club program. And the problem is they had nobody to play with. They had no games that they could receive or play with because they did not have insurance coverage. And so it is true that 4 years ago, the board approved that they could be included on the ICSD insurance policy, but there would be no other funding to support this program. And in fact, the coaches were volunteers, and the parents basically made voluntary payments to support paying for ice time. Now, I put it that way very clearly. It was not mandatory payments. Obviously, somebody had to pay for ice time, but nobody who could not afford it was excluded. It was not a club. And so at that point, my son was on that program, and then the next year he did make the varsity hockey team, and I will say I lost track as to what happened to that modified program until this year. But what has happened is that this year, sometime in the spring, the volunteer coaches approached the Amateur Athletic Union, and they are now, AAU supports a modified and a JV program. So they provide the insurance for for these teams, and the other thing why it's confusing is that what I learned a couple days ago is that the Western Division of AAU requires that the JV team, for example, be school-based. So this can give rise to confusion among parents. Is this an ICSD team? Well, in some sense, it is, in the sense that you can only be a member of the district, the same district, to be on this JV team, but it is not an ICSD sanctioned team. But actually some parents, or I guess some of the staff, were kind enough to provide physicals, or basically there had to be some classification met to be on the JV team. And as I understand it, that was a voluntary choice, but again, confusion arose as to what this represented. So I just wanted to let you know as a parent that there are issues of communication. The coaches, however, are volunteers, and it is a very excellent program along the lines of a co-curricular, community-supported program. And I don't know if you have any questions about that. I think it may come up later in your executive session, but I did want you to know, trying to think what else I can say.
Well, Corinne, it still sounds fairly confusing, but
Yes,
thanks for the history. And
Yeah, so you have the history, and you also know that it's actually not necessarily an ICSD sanctioned. You have to learn a little bit about AAU, how that's set up. Okay? Any questions?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Thanks, Frank. Hey, Josh Bornstein. Oh, you mean that Josh
There wasn't, but
Bornstein?
there actually were two Josh Bornsteins in town for a stretch. It was like this kid at IC who, back in the days when we all rented videos, he was doing stuff like not returning the videos in time. He was getting into car accidents. It got a little bit.
But it's you, Josh. We thought that was you, Josh Bornstein.
Clearly, because I've already gone on for half my time just saying that.
If there's any history,
So you all know it's me, right? I could have been behind it.
Josh, if there's any history you want to, relate to, feel free. But if you have a point, Josh, that would be great.
I think. I came to talk to you guys about inclusion tonight. You're going to hear a report later updating you on what's happening with the plan for including kids with disabilities. And it's going to be tempting to hear that as a curriculum and instruction issue. And I want to let you in on something that I've picked up in my own research out there on inclusion. And I want to get your attention with this. To think about this also as an HR issue. Okay? As APPR is coming along, right, and teachers are going to be held accountable for teaching everybody, for teaching students and student performance. Unless we do inclusion well, it's going to give folks a really powerful reason to say, take this kid away, have somebody else deal with this, because I don't want to be held accountable for their progress, right? Now, we do know that when inclusion is done well, it beats anything else for kids with disabilities and others. And it doesn't hurt anybody when it's done well, right? The report you're going to hear tonight, I think, is, I think, the best efforts of folks who've been working on it. But I got to tell you, from my long-term perspective and from the work that we did in the committee then until now, this is feeling like a good idea that somebody's got to take leadership with and take up and run with. If you remember RTI a couple of years ago, those of us who were on the board back then, that was a dramatically powerful effort. We hired a consultant, we had a policy, we had a manual, we had a rollout, we had building accountability all within about 18 months to 2 years. This effort has been kind of going stepwise slow, and I think we're going to hear that again tonight. I think they're good steps, but they're not going to be adequate to deal with this piece. And I'm hearing from folks in the administration that they're waiting for the board to take leadership. And so I'm going to speak to you to think about that. That you guys really need to kind of step up and do this. If we want to get off of CINI status, we're going to have to do that. Otherwise, if we keep doing the same thing we've always done, we're going to keep getting what we've always got. And if CINI and APPR aren't reasons enough for you guys to really push that inclusion's the way we're going to go, we're going to wind up in a pile. So I hope I did get to it within 2 minutes. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Josh. And I do like history, so that's Ruth Marr.
Hi, I'm Ruth Marr. I'm a grandparent of a child in the district, and I serve on the Special Education Vision Committee and also on the SWD, Student with Disability Improvement Plan Committee. I'm here tonight because I hope to hear Ms. Evelyn's presentation on the SWD Improvement Plan, but when it appeared that it probably was going to happen later than I was going to be able to stay, I decided to draft a statement which I'd like to read. It's okay. And I think it'll be less than 2 minutes. I'm grateful that you will hear tonight an update on the improvement plan for students with disabilities, and I look forward to the board committing resources to moving the plan forward. The matter has some urgency. Although some data indicate we are doing better, we are not doing well enough. Too many students with disabilities are not completing high school, not in 4 years, and not even in 5. Inclusion is happening, but its implementation is inconsistent and regrettably not always successful. Inclusion is happening without an overall district policy and without a plan for successful inclusion, such as the one outlined in the report. I urge the board to give the report its full attention and to commit the necessary time and resources to planning and implementing research-driven changes that will improve the education of children with disabilities and the culture of inclusion in the district. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I think I can't stay. Looking at the agenda, I think it's going to be too late.
I don't know, Ruth, we're pretty quick these days, so hang in
I'll see.
there. On to student reps. Allison, anything? Correct.
There's an event called Trivia Night. It's going to be sponsored by the Brain Team and the senior class of 2012. It'll take place at the high school cafeteria this Thursday, actually, from 6 to 9 p.m. Dinner will be provided, and as well, vegetarians are welcome. We have dinner for you, too. I invite all of you to bring your families. Come. It's a great family, fun atmosphere. And yeah, like I said, there's a suggested donation of $10, but feel free to pay what you can.
Tomorrow, the IHS Red Cross Club is having commercial action.
The first quarter ended last Wednesday. The grades for the teachers are due, I think, tomorrow. So some teachers are stressing to get their grading done. Some teachers already have it done. There was a Link Crew movie night on November 10th. It was a very successful event. There were, I think, 40 freshmen in attendance, which is a record for not directly after school Link Crew events.
Recently, it has come to the attention of many parents of IHS students that alcohol use rates are very high among IHS students, and so many of the parents have formed a Facebook forum to beginning to try to deal with those issues as a community and as a school. And the school play All in the Timing opens this weekend, and you should all come.
Anything else? What night was the trivia night?
It's this Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah, 6 to 9.
LACS.
Alrighty. So this past week, a group of LACS students and staff traveled to the Coalition of Essential Schools Fall Forum in Providence, Rhode Island at the well-known Met School, and I was actually fortunate enough to be one of those students. For those of you who don't know about the Coalition of Essential Schools, it's an organization that represents many schools similar to LACS through helping offer resources to support students-centered, equity-driven learning and accompanying transformation through its 10 common principles that put emphasis on teaching and learning. We presented a workshop on creating respectful communities through mentoring. It was very well received. We also had a chance to attend many workshops on alternative education and hear from speakers such as Alfie Cohn, Deborah Meyer, and Dennis Lipke. Upon talking amongst the other students that traveled with me and staff as well, we are excited to incorporate what we learned into our teaching and learning at LACS.
On October 29th, a student organization, which is called Students for Economic Justice, organized a school walkout partnered with New Roots Charter School in support of the Occupy Wall Street campaign. About 40 high school students from LACS walked out, and they walked down to the Commons, joined the New Roots students, and held a protest. Although the school did not condone the walkout, we supported our students' sense of engagement and ownership, and the students had the option to either get a one-day suspension or write a paper on why they did the walkout.
All right, there is a school dance coming up, and we reminded all students that all school rules apply at this dance. They will be signing a contract upon entering. We also just want to let everyone know who's concerned that school rules still apply.
There are 2 parent meetings being held this month. The first one is on project-based learning, and the second is on relationships and rigor.
Right. LACS was concerned to learn about the new rule regarding the buses in terms of field trips, that we must only use buses on our field trips. It severely hampers our ability to go on our spring trips, and it is also a large extra cost to the district and subsequently the community.
Cycle 2 has officially begun, and students have been writing self-reflections, and the teachers are now working very, very hard to write hundreds of lengthy personal evaluations for their students.
This week I was approached by a couple of different LACS groups wondering how this is a question, how they might get on the agenda to present their programs to the board, so.
On Monday, LACS had its first author visit from Kathleen Diamani, who's a local author, and it went very well.
And finally, let us know if you lost your water bottles from LACS. We'd be happy to get you new ones.
Any of us look like this? This is Brad. Anything else, Abhi? Good. Excellent responses, questions. Judy, go ahead.
Dr. Brown stole my water bottle.
What, do you blame it on Mikey? It's always Mikey's fault? Is it also can't spell? I know, I mean, go ahead. Go ahead, Jay.
A couple quick questions. There's a blood drive going on. Is that for the students?
Yes.
And it's going to be held in what room?
It's going to be held in activities.
Yeah.
That's where it's going to be held.
That's right. Yeah. I got another question. You're holding a dance and you're going to ask kids to sign some sort of contracts. Is that a new thing to do, or have you been doing that?
Well, we haven't really had very many dances. It's kind of a new thing for LACS, so we're trying. Everything is brand new for us in terms of.
So that's actually a new thing to be doing.
Yeah.
Kind of a dancing with LACS kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was curious, and maybe the students from the high school, the Ithaca High, might know whether something like that is asked to be done at the dances at the high school.
It is.
They don't seem.
Yeah, there are contracts. you have to
We believe
sign
that
before-
that's the case.
So yeah, we weren't really clarified on that. I'm actually the class officer, so I run the ticket booth for, say, homecoming, which is the last dance that we had.
Right.
So every student has to have their parents sign a sobriety contract, as well as an appropriate dancing contract. It's in the same thing. So there's a front and a back. The parent has to sign that on the back with a date, and we try to limit forgeries. Definitely, there's a lot, like let's say the last day on the last period that we're selling them, so we cut that off. So there's a lot less forgeries. So they talk to their parents. We encourage that because we really want to break down on the inappropriate behavior at dances.
But there is a contract that is signed.
Yes, yes, yes.
Right. And this was in place at the
For a
homecoming
long time.
for a long time.
Yeah.
Just to make that clear, that this has been in place, and the behavior that we see at the dances is not what what many would think is appropriate, or would probably be not in keeping with the contract. Is that, have you,
I think that that might be fair. I think that the board members that showed up at homecoming, I think it would have been more respectful to judge them maybe if you showed longer than the time that you were there. I'd like most of you board members to actually come for a full dance, but it's kind of troublesome now that you saw at homecoming. Now we're having dramatic changes to our dances. The winter formal has to be somewhat of a soiree. We have to hire a band. We have to have a buffet of dinner. So it's actually cutting into the budget and the revenue that the senior class makes for their senior trip and graduation. So that's actually a huge issue that it's coming up at every single meeting that I go to at student government. So I don't know like what you propose should happen, but having such a dramatic change in the dances is going to cause numbers and population to completely drop. We're expecting maybe 75 people to come to winter formal this year, compared to maybe like 700 last year.
I was not at homecoming, but I did hear a few things about, but I'm not sure that I was aware of the changes that were made for winter formal. But it sounds like a building-based decision. Jay has a question.
One more lesson. You mentioned the buses.
Yes.
What's going on there?
Well, just recently we were told that on this trip to the Fall Forum, we were told that it's going to happen in all trips prior, that we have to take school buses on all school-sanctioned field
As
trips.
opposed to what?
As opposed to teachers' vans and other cars and
Parents driving.
with, of course, we went through the proper paperwork and things like that before this, and it's going to severely hamper our ability to do trips, especially when we go to places like New Orleans. How are we going to get around down there? And
Was some of that explained to you, some of the reasoning behind that?
we were not really told too much of the reasoning. I imagine it has to do with bus drivers' livelihood and
Boy, I think it's more liability
making sure it
than
doesn't work.
Liability.
All right.
There are many issues.
Is there something that changed since the liability?
Nothing has changed much, but we'll set up a meeting with Mr. Greenberg.
Can I speak to that, just
Sure.
to help my friends here?
Yeah.
So there has been very productive meetings with friends at the district office about this, and while it is going to take some adjustment, I think we understand the liability issues. It's a school, we understand for the district, the personal liability for the professionals that have been doing this up until now, endorsed practice by the district. Things are changing, and we're adjusting to those and trying to work creatively with curriculum instruction office, transportation, and the business office. So I think when there's creative, bright people at the table, some creative solutions can come up that protect the integrity of our program and still protect the interests of the district. So we're working earnestly to that end.
I could have said it.
There you go. Anything else? Chris, Pat, anything?
What's the date of your dance?
It's this Saturday.
This Saturday?
Yes.
What time does it start?
9 o'clock.
At the gym?
No, it's actually at the Community School of Music and Arts.
Oh, okay.
Downtown. All right. Anything else? Okay. Thank you all. On to the consents.
So moved by Jay True.
Second.
Second by Seth. Moved and seconded.
Just
Any?
make one comment.
Oh,
Point
please
out
do.
and thank the the George Denty's Youth Wrestling Boosters. I note that we're accepting a contribution of $10,680 from them as part of the consent. We want to point that out and thank them for that.
For those of you who may not remember, George Denty's graduate of Ithaca High School, Cornell Law, was a DA down in New York, and came back and was a district attorney here, actively involved in athletics. Fraternity brother of mine, and actually did pass away very unfortunately a few years ago. George was actively involved in student government back in the day. I've said that if you want to know what the epitome of a student athlete at Ithaca High School is or should be, and that is George Denty. So really an outstanding student, top in the class, 3-sport athlete. Really everything that is the culture at Ithaca High School is George Denty. So I appreciate the donation on his behalf for the wrestling match. So I just wanted to add that in. A little bit of history. We like to remember what Ithaca is all about. Anything else on the consent agenda? All in favor? That's everyone. With Sean and Elder absent, Sean is at an event. So frankly, Dr. Brown, I think without further ado, it's up to you.
I'll be brief because I'm looking forward to the presentation. One thing, this is for the board. At the last meeting, there were many recognitions for you and the work that you've done from staff members and students. And I sat here and I didn't say much. It's not because I'm not appreciative as well, but because my gift wasn't ready yet. But tonight it's ready. And I just want to share with the community and you, we appreciate what you do. Having sat in the seat for 9 months, I know that every decision you make is unpopular with someone. There are consequences to every decision you make. There are tough decisions you're making. But I also know that you're volunteers and that many of you are putting in more than 40+ hours a week in official school business. In addition to the 40+ hours a week, you're all at every event. On Sunday afternoon at the spelling bee when I was eliminated early on a 3-letter word.
It was mispronounced.
Dr. Brown, there were howls of protest.
And it was good to see all of you. Every board member was at that event on a Sunday afternoon. When at a football game, when it was cold, I looked in the stands and all of you were there. So I'm hoping that our community understands and recognizes that there's strength in the diversity on our board because knowing all of you, each of you come with a different perspective on many of our issues. You live in different places, you got different backgrounds. There's diversity in thought here, and that brings us strength. But there's power in the unity. So when we look out at events like Sunday afternoons or a football game, you're all there. When we make tough decisions, and some of those are unanimous decisions, but they're tough, that's power. We're moving some significant work forward in this community and this organization that's going to get us to excellence very quickly. And it's because of the power that we have in our unity. So I just wanted to recognize that to you and to let you know that my gift is ready tonight. I have, in the athletic department, Mr. Redmond and I, we've been talking about what to do for you to show our support. We've come up with a one-of-a-kind little red Nike endorsed sweatshirt for each one of you. And I know some of you come to board meetings with hoodies on, so for those of you who like those things, you can wear these to the board meeting. It's your uniform now. But for those of you who don't, maybe at the games or something, you could wear one of these nice, one-of-a-kind, little red, it's high school. Very good. So we have one, various sizes for each one of you. And again, thank you. I was quiet because I wasn't appreciated, but I just didn't have my gift ready. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
We appreciate that.
That's all I have.
Just a present and then you're done. That's fine. That's great. On to school district business, and Bridget, I think we are finally ready for you, Bridget. Community partnerships. We talked about community partnerships a few weeks ago, and Bridget's family reading partnership not only partners with the district but with many organizations in town, and you're going to tell us more.
We partner with everyone we can. Thank you so much for inviting me this evening. I'm very happy to be the community organization Our relationship is so close, such a close alliance with the Ithaca City School District that we actually live in your space. We're tucked away out in Danby, and it is, we are grateful every single day for that kind of partnership that allows us to be there. It is also reciprocated in much more than the value of the rent, and I always like to say that you'll see before you numbers of books that go to children, Ithaca City School District children and Tompkins County children, from the time even before baby's born, the read-along songs set with Cal Walker and John Simon that goes to so many. So it's definitely a wonderful relationship, and we're very grateful for it. So I think you all know something about the Family Reading Partnership. Rather than go on for hours, in fact, I was going to set the time so that I made sure that I was really good and start the clock going. I've provided visuals. So this has an overview of many of the Family Reading Partnership programs, and I'll pass it around so people can see it who aren't familiar. The overview of Family Reading Partnership is that we have a vision for creating a culture of literacy, understanding that if that's truly going to happen, that every single child in our community has early and frequent and pleasurable experiences with books, that it really is going to take everyone in the community, businesses, schools, libraries, organizations. So the work we do is promoting and supporting family, school, and community engagement around children's books. And as many of you know, often it's with giving books as gifts to carry that message into a home. It's one thing to talk about it, it's another for families actually to have the tools to do it. This evening, I thought I'd focus on just two things. One is the recent Kids Book Fest that just happened on Saturday, and the second is Love Those Letters. And of course, you see one of your own, Carol Cedarholm, a reading specialist at Northeast School, who is the genius behind Love Those Letters. So I invited her to be with me for that part. Hence all these gorgeous things here. So first of all, Kids Book Fest, the purple program you have in front of you speaks of, if you just even turn it over, you'll see that to give this gift to the community, it's really a gift from the community as well. And there are more than 300 volunteers. Again, libraries, every school in Tompkins County is involved, especially Ithaca City School District schools. It's a close partnership, again, because it's held at Boynton Middle School. It takes up nearly the entire first floor. The show that you have been seeing loop around is from this year's Kids Book Fest on Saturday. The theme, and actually 2,947 people came. Quite amazing. It's kept free every year. This year it's because of Tompkins County Area Development. 3,600 copies of the book Reading Magic went out to families to invite them ahead of time. It was just a phenomenal day. So let's see. This is every year there's a passport that children get to go through the Kids Book Fest, and they get stamps at different stations. So I'll pass that around so people can take a look at it. It's always a fun hands-on thing. So shifting to Love Those Letters. Boy, genius is the only way to describe it. And this was actually part of Carol's sabbatic project. So that's a really special beginning. Imagining that, well, Carol, do you want to tell a little bit about it, just the beginnings of it?
Sure.
Okay.
A lot of you have heard me talk about this, but it was a sabbatic that I did in 2010 that was inspired by actually a frustration over feeling that children were not learning the alphabet early enough and well enough by the time I got them in first grade to work with them, and that we ought to be able to do something to address that issue. And the idea was to create a set of keywords that would be used district-wide so that there was a continuous regular language that everybody was using in order to teach the alphabet, so that children who struggled with it, either children who are learning English for the first time, children who have learning disabilities, children who have not had much exposure to books prior to school, would have an easier time learning, because they would hear it in pre-K, they would hear it in kindergarten, the same language would be used in first grade. And So that project has become a reality, and the materials that resulted from that work are in every elementary school in our county, actually.
So until this point, you've heard a little bit of the story before, a vision for a DVD that was in fact created, a pilot DVD, some materials that were line art. And as Carol and I continued to meet, thinking about this concept, we realized together it just grew. And we started thinking about the community piece, and of course, when Family Reading Partnership is connected to something, we're always thinking about beautiful and joyful. And Katrina Morris, who's our assistant director, is an amazing artist. And so the line art that was created, she actually created paintings for. And you'll see the images. So this year, it's a whole new set of materials. You'll see a piece in your packets that show what every single pre-K, kindergarten, and Head Start pre-K, kindergarten, Head Start, and first grade through our Ithaca City School District and across Tompkins County. There are also sets at our community centers, in many of our child cares. It's another layer that we'd like to do at some time. The UPKs, this is a good time to really thank Connie Evelyn, who believed in this vision from the beginning and helped make the materials available all around the Ithaca City School District. Obviously, funding for the materials in Tompkins County came from another source, and the BOCES print shop printed everything fairly inexpensively, which is another reason that it's possible that a book like this, a gorgeous big book, I think is only like $8. So we have an all-new DVD. The Triad Foundation contributed a very large, significant grant, so that believing as we did that there was so much more possibility to this, and so it's been refilmed. The new book and the new words are now read aloud on the DVD by Mr. Ken Walker, and there's a new introduction. Lisa Tietze, who's the choreography, now teaches the dance, so there's a lot more to it, and we're going to show you a very brief preview of it. And then open for questions. So that's our little brief.
And you can view this trailer on YouTube. Just type in "Love Those Letters" when you get to YouTube.
This is the part that I hope will.
Photosynthesis Productions, local film company produced it.
And you'll see our own Ithaca High School marching band, as well as students from DeWitt and Northeast marching. Okay, I know the DVD's in there. Dr. Brown promised to be texted.
Dr. Brown will fix it. I wasn't sure, I wasn't aware we had a marching band, so this will be good if we can see that.
You weren't, oh my gosh. Well, on really special projects, you'll see them come out.
They dance and move about, and they play and move about.
Let's see if we have that.
His wife does
That can be, that's Connie's.
Okay, so that's the issue.
Ah,
But you were saying,
and that's hooked up, and this is hooked up.
Are you plugged in?
yeah, you plugged in, so now you
I don't know, it's the power plant.
30 seconds.
What would we do if there was a time that there was a board meeting that Dr. Brown wasn't needed for technical assistance?
We rely on Mr. Ainsley.
Yes.
So this is where you get to stretch, Bridget.
Yeah, you should be set now. In that second.
Well, I have a moment of silence. I just want to thank the board for their continuing openness about continuing sabbaticals, because you never know where an idea is going.
Yeah.
And these opportunities are not things you can plan ahead. These are things that grow and evolve by the care and commitment of the professionals we have. So I remind you again that you are taking a great deal of the compliments for making this become a reality, because you helped fund this.
Thanks, Susan.
And thank you. I know that it's a big issue and a lot of responsibility, but this is just some of the fruition, and we should bask in the glory. Not permitted.
Even though we know it's
Relax in a minute.
Okay.
I think we're at the pause mode right now, and so there we go. No way.
Should we check?
The next project, Carol, is love that technology.
Love those numbers, that's the next one.
It's gonna be really loud.
How about system preferences with center or
Yeah, just play it for your outwork one. You'll be here.
It's fine. Is that the Occupy Wall Street people?
Let us get the heart.
Oh, it's not?
Welcome to Love Status. Sing with me the alphabet. Make the sounds the letters do.
Through song, dance, sign language, and vivid imagery, Love Those Letters engages all children because it's fun.
Everyone is already teaching the alphabet. Every kindergarten, pre-K, every teacher is. What's nice about this is that there's a real simple theme, lots of different stimuli and ways of interpreting the information, and it's one little compact package.
B, bike, B. B is for bike. Blue bikes are bright and beautiful.
It's very rare that there are activities that kids gravitate to so quickly. And then what the wonderful part is that they're learning their letters.
T, turtle, rainbow, Hello, heart. I love you. I is for igloo. Igloos are icy cold.
O, octopus, volcano.
There's a sense of sound, there's movement, the kinesthetic experience, there's a visual. You see someone move and you dance and create your own story, really, with your imagination.
Sing with me the alphabet. Make the sounds the letters do. Sing with me the alphabet. It's fun for me and you. Music solidifies information in the consciousness. What better way to have kids learn the alphabet?
I guess they don't realize that they're learning, just singing along. The pictures are very, they're very bold and bright and they describe you, and the words are very simple.
Be quite smart.
It's something that they can get very, very quickly. I would recommend it to any parent.
It's marvelous. I can't say enough good things about it.
So act out those letters. Sing and dance, but most of all, have fun together. Sing with me the alphabet. It's fun for me and you. It's fun for me and you. It's fun for me and you.
We'll applaud that. There we go. Back from the dark. Great job.
Well, it's one thing to have beautiful music and to have song and dance and all of this, but the measure, as we know, is in the results and the impact of what happens in the end. And so we are in the early stages. Lynn Vanderwood is here and are looking into the PALS data to measure the difference that's happened. It's been a short amount of time and only the pilot has been out, but there's already a difference that you can see. In addition, we've had really dramatic feedback from teachers who are telling us that, particularly with children who are most challenged with learning around reading, that it's having the greatest impact. And that's music to anyone's ears. And I guess it's not surprising if you think about the different learning modalities, and that it's not just visual and auditory, but it's also kinesthetic. And so children are moving, and for those children, they can remember bike by starting to move their hands and remember bike. So Does anyone have any questions, or Carol, do you have anything that you want to add?
I am hoping that Lynn and I will be presenting the data on the test scores of the phonological awareness literacy screening, and we're going to be sharing it with Connie Evelyn soon. Tim Moon also helped us a lot with preparing that data.
And I should add very important news that thanks to Kionics, they are now the sponsor of Love Those Letters. So across Tompkins County in pre-K and kindergarten, and again in Head Start, all children will get the new Love Those Letters that now has, in addition to the new book and the new DVD, also has a CD included with it. And everyone's invited December 11th to our world premiere to be held at Culp Auditorium, the Love Those Letters world premiere. And the time of that is from 1 to 2:30. You have a flyer.
And it'll be very exciting. We're going to have a band and a chorus of young people singing the song. Greg McQuaid, who wrote the music, will be there directing. The ABC dancers from Northeast School will be there with Lisa Tsitsi. And it should be a great time.
Yes.
In next year's video, can the board participate in the dancing portion of it? You know we like to dance, I don't know.
Lisa's really happy to come and teach everyone. And the moves are pretty easy.
We're ready.
But if you watch the film, there's a step-by-step instructional video.
Right.
So that was one of the newest additions.
Seth will take it. That's right.
Go ahead. And I must say something. Thank you, Bridget, and thank you, partnership. I'm seeing this work come to life every day in our schools. It's having impacts on achievement and in every other area as well. So thank you. But I'm also seeing it come to life in my house. The different mediums that my 21-month-old is accessing now. She knows how to get to this video on YouTube. She reads the book, and she's checking out the DVD now. She's in love with it. She dances every time she hears the little jingle. She sings along. She's doing all this work. Kyle Walker is more popular than Elmo and Barney in my house. It's crazy.
That's a high bar.
When we had the baby, he visited, he brought some food over, and he walks in, and it was as if she saw a movie star. And so to see that happen with a young lady who can't say much right now, but who's feeling this work, I must say thank you, because you're engaging her in work that I don't know if I could have done. So thank you.
It's our joy.
Thank you.
Great. Anything else, board? Thanks, Bridget. Thank you. And moving on, Dr. Brown, I'm seeing Common Core standards updates.
You know what, actually, we can change the agenda a bit. We have a lot of folks who are here for the disability part, and we can switch those two items.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
I have no problem.
So I'll invite Ms. Evelyn. Thank you. You need this?
Yes.
That's the one.
I was going to say, type green in water then?
Okay.
Dr. Brown, you want to preview what we're about to see? I'm filling dead space here.
Okay,
So-
sorry for the awkward pause.
No, there you go.
As the parent, Ruth Mayer, was walking out, I went out to speak with her about the Students with Disabilities Plan, Improvement Plan, and really to assure her that we are very focused on this as a district. I think it's important to start with, and I hadn't planned to do this, it's important to start with helping people understand why the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction is presenting the Students with Disabilities Plan update. When Dr. Brown came, under his leadership and vision, we reorganized central office executive team members in terms of what they are tasked with. relative to oversight. And so I have moved from supervising principals primarily and some directors to the oversight of all instruction in our district. That includes special education, instruction for our students who are identified as having academic intervention service needs, instruction for our students who are 5 floor plan students, which usually means that they need some additional support, particularly in test administration situations, and oversight of our early childhood programs. And I've said that, too, to piggyback on what Josh Bornstein talked about in terms of we really need someone, a pinpoint person, a point person, to oversee the implementation of the Students with Disabilities Plan, and inclusion is a huge piece of that. It's important for me to say that I'm very passionate about this work. I come from a family who had members that were severely disabled and that were included in general education classes. I'm a former special educator in a district that piloted an inclusion program over 12 years ago, actually over 15 years ago at this point, and so it's important to also note that inclusion is not new. And the students that I had in this program had never been in general education classrooms. They were my students in 6th through 8th grade, as I was their reading teacher in a self-contained setting. And then they moved into 9th grade and they were part of general education. I was their resource room teacher, and 9th period would come at the end of the day and they were spent. They were psychologically, emotionally spent. And I had to spend time talking with them about how they really could achieve in the same classes with students that did not have individualized education plans. And those students went on to graduate and do great things, and I still talk to many of them. So I just wanted to say that you really do have in the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction a person who is extremely passionate about students with disabilities. And I agree with you, Josh, that you really have to have an effective systemic approach to this work in order for it to make the critical difference. So with that, I just want to say I want to give you a brief update and provide you an opportunity to ask us some questions about this plan. I think a key question for us to respond to as a district is, are we creating a sustainable, inclusive educational community in the Ithaca City School District? And to be more specific, the question really is, are we ensuring that all of our students have access to the general education curriculum in the general education classroom? Are we promoting that opportunity? Are we promoting engagement for those students that aren't in the general education classroom all the time? Access to a rigorous curriculum that's aligned with the Common Core, access to evidence-based instructional practices, access to an environment, a teaching and learning environment that makes them feel like valued members of the community. That's really what we're talking about when we talk about inclusion. This is the front page of the plan, and it outlines the Students with Disabilities performance measures that were decided on by this committee. And really, I want to pause for a minute and just thank the members of the committee that have done all of this work. And if you could just stand if you're a part of that committee so we can see who you are. Thank you. This committee was very fluid. Many of us attended some meetings or all meetings, but we worked together to determine the performance measures that you see in front of you. And so they go from ELA to math to graduation rate, attendance, and so forth. As you can see, from 2007 to 2009, we made some gains in ELA and math in terms of the performance index score, and I'm speaking to the New York State testing program. Our graduation rate, unfortunately, is a place where we really need to do more work. And I'll speak to that later, but you can see that early on we made some gains, and then in 2010, we had some regression. Attendance is a place where we've made some critical gains and have been able to sustain those gains.
Classification rate, the New York State average in terms of the percentage for classification rate is 12. I suspect that's why we chose that target with the help of Sean Brady, who facilitated these meetings. And right now, we're closer to 15%. Again, much work needs to be done there. Our declassification rate is up to 6%, and you can see the target there at 10. And our students with disabilities in out-of-district placements is a place where we've made much ground, and that is the number of students. So that's 117 students were in out-of-district placements in 2009, and you see that number has considerably dropped. We've made some gains with students being able to attend their home schools. That's very important relative to feeling like a valued member of the community. And participation in co-curricular activities is also a place, I think, where we still need to do much work. So those are the measures, and those are the targets, and our progression towards those targets. You can stop me and ask me questions if you want as we go along, yes, Judy.
When you say out-of-district placement, you mean TST BOCES too?
Yes.
That's out-of-district?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll just, if you want to back up to that. The mathematics don't work on your classification percentage and your declassification rate. You're not going to get to 12 if you're only going to declassify 4% more. That mathematics doesn't work. Just to point it out, those two goals can't happen. Either the declassification rate has to be much greater, or you need to not classify as many children as they enter, or it won't, or you can't get there. So I just point out that those two are, while you put them up there as targets, they're mathematically opposed to one another.
Okay. Duly noted.
He does that often, by the way.
That's okay.
He knows that.
That's okay. We need folks to point those things up to us. Thank you. June 7th was, I believe, one of our last meetings, and I think I was present at that meeting, and we met one of the priority strategies, which called for us to define as a group inclusion and what it means in the Ithaca City School District. And there you have it. All students will have full access to the opportunity engagement in the entire curriculum available in the Ithaca City School District. And the thing I would say about that, again, reflecting on my experiences as an inclusion teacher, which is what my title was, is that, and Dr. Brown has made these comments, you can't expect students to be able to perform on a New York State exam or any standardized test if they do not have access to the material that will be assessed. Again, that's an improbable equation, right? You can't have students facing grade level material for the first time when we're faced with the assessment that we will be held accountable to. And so these are the things that we're trying to promote in the district, ensuring that our students are in the least restrictive environment, that our students with disabilities, at least 80% of the time. This is just a brief list. There's much more to this list, but I wanted to share some professional development opportunities that we've engaged our educators in.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Why are kids not, the least restrictive environment, as I understand it, is the requirement. That's what we're supposed to do. What's stopping us from putting kids in the least restrictive environment? Why does it happen that they're, is it just easier to put them in a more restrictive, or what's happening?
Are you asking me what would prevent a student from being placed in a general education classroom?
Or least restrictive? I mean, when we evaluate a certain student, you know, the team comes together, or the people involved in their education, and says, you know, why are kids being placed in a more restrictive environment as opposed to less? Is it just that it's easier to do it that way? Is it what's happening that allows our educators to take a particular child and go more restrictive as opposed to less? Like, is it?
So I don't know that I would say that our students are being placed in a more restrictive environment. What would prevent, I think, a student from being in a least restrictive environment, one of the things that prevents that is scheduling, quite frankly, Seth.
What does that mean? Like what?
So a more restrictive environment can include resource room. Some of these things are IEP mandates, and so we pull kids out to be in resource room because that's the way it is mandated according to their individualized education plan, which is
So
a
it
legal
goes back to
document.
that meeting? Is that kinda-
Some of the ways that the state has mandates around providing academic intervention services have prevented us from including students in the least restrictive environment. I can say that in this district, because of response to intervention, we have more of our educators pushing into general education classes, more of our educators providing those kinds of supports, reading and math supports, and so in the general education classroom. And so they can remain, again, in the least restrictive environment and still gain access to the services that are mandated by their individualized education plans and by the state. So it becomes a matter of resources, scheduling, and sometimes, you know, there can be other complex issues in terms of why students are not thriving in the least restrictive environment, but that's sort of a long continuum. Did I answer your question, Seth?
Yeah.
Okay. So, some of the professional development opportunities our staff's been engaged in include the Nancy Letts residency. She's a consultant that's been working with us for a number of years. I think at this point I could say she has engaged all of our educators at every level, in every building. And her focus has been co-teaching and differentiated instruction. And she is back with us, again, focused on co-teaching, differentiated instruction, and her work is being anchored in ensuring that our teachers understand the shifts that the Common Core Learning Standards represent. We call it a residency because she comes back and works with the same groups over and over again, so there's not a one-time professional development opportunity with her, so that the educators that work with her are in relationship with her. They're able to communicate with her even when she's not in the district, so that, you know, it feels more embedded than a one-time workshop, which we understand doesn't work very well. OCs has just hired Jennifer Gondek, and she has a background as an instructional specialist for inclusive education, and she's begun working with our district, particularly consulting with principals around inclusive practices. Fall Creek staff recently went to a training around positive behavioral intervention and supports, PBIS. I should remind us that we have PBIS at other elementary schools in our district, at BJM and Enfield. And this is really a framework for our students and teachers to maintain appropriate behavior in schools, and it usually results in increased academic achievement for our students. Educators can develop a common language around being a learning community and what that means for both the educators and the students. Responsive classroom and therapeutic crisis intervention are ongoing professional development opportunities that we've engaged our educators in over time. Responsive classroom being a formal part of our induction program. And the therapeutic crisis intervention, again, trainings or professional development opportunities have been ongoing. Many of our educators have been engaged in those opportunities that really help them de-escalate a situation so that it doesn't become unmanageable, again, for the student and for the educator. Because when it becomes unmanageable, that's when students are rejected or suspended, and it really doesn't have to evolve that way. When educators are given the appropriate training, they learn how to master the skill, really, of de-escalating a student in a situation that can reach a crisis level. And I would like to say as well that our transportation department has been engaged in therapeutic crisis intervention training as well over time. The expansion of inclusive practices is really important to highlight here. We've increased co-teaching teams across the district, and that would include at all grade levels at every building. We've embedded restorative practices at the building level. This year, Boynton Middle School is piloting a restorative practice approach to discipline issues. And I know that Dr. Myers has spent, I don't know, over 100 man-hours looking at the code of conduct with specific groups in the community to ensure that we have those practices embedded in our code of conduct. And just to be clear, restorative practices really focus on a less punitive approach to any infraction to the code of conduct, and it really takes a more educational approach to ensuring that kids are learning from the experience and they're not apt to make the same error in judgment, so to speak. We have an increase of students with disabilities in the regular education classroom, and if you look at if you can flip back to the chart, I'm not sure if you flip back to the chart, we see that in the time of 2007, we had 58% of our students with disabilities in general ed classrooms, 80% of the time. That number has moved almost 20%, and I think we can attribute that to the increase of co-teaching teams across the district. I'm just highlighting growth over time and not implying that we don't have a long way to go, because we do. Literacy instruction for students with disabilities pre-K-12 is also a priority strategy outlined in the plan, and the implementation of Read 180 and System 44 was achieved by June 2011 at all secondary schools. I'm just going to use my cheat sheet here to give you some of the data associated with Read 180 and System 44. 61 of 101 students, almost 45 now and I can't see anything. 61 of 101 students, that's 60%, had 2 or more years of reading growth by mid-year. 80 of 101 students, that's 79%, had at least 1 year's reading growth by mid-year. And we're using the Scholastic Reading Inventory as our assessment data there. 15 out of 19 System 44 students, 70%, had fluency gains, and 31 out of 39 students, that's 82%, had reading comprehension growth by the end of the year who were engaged in System 44. So I've only focused on the priority strategies of the Students with Disabilities Plan this evening. There are other strategies embedded in the plan, but I tried to keep it as brief as possible. Graduation rate is another priority strategy. And I've listed the appointment of the Dean of Students at IHS because I have about 2 pages worth of notes in terms of what Mr. Jordan has been doing in his time as the Dean of Students at Ithaca High School. And it includes developing relationships with our local colleges to recruit free tutoring for our students. After Thanksgiving, Ithaca College will provide tutors in social studies. In January, because of a relationship with Cornell University, we'll have tutors for our students in other subject areas. He has created a unique collaboration, I think, with the Ithaca Youth Bureau to pilot internships programs for our students with disabilities where they can earn credit. He works with professional school counselors and the leadership team to develop and implement plans for individual students, both with disabilities and students who present at-risk factors for not being able to access graduation. And I really could go on and on about the work that Phil Jordan is doing at the high school. And if you're interested in that, I would be happy to share more later. We have an increased enrollment in our blended learning environment, and right now we use Plato to support that blended learning environment, and we have 69 of our students with disabilities currently accessing resources in an online learning environment. We have increased enrollment in the College Success Seminar. It's a dual credit course offered through TC3 that is really targeting students with disabilities, although other students have access to it, and it is its purpose is really to promote successful transition to college. Because of many reasons, we have increased ability to track and report just how our students with disabilities are doing relative to their cohort. And so by cohort, we mean if they came into ninth grade in 2007, they are the 2007 cohort, and so they are on track to graduate in 2011. And so we are tracking their progress to make sure that they are making meaningful gains in terms of credit accrual, so that they are graduating on time. And I know that when we look at our school district report card, we have seen some gains in students with disabilities graduating in 5 years. And so that's the end of my presentation for our plan. I open it up to any other questions that you might have.
Questions, comments, questions?
Yeah, what's the board's role?
What's the board's role?
I mean, what do you want us to do? I mean, what are you asking us to do? Telling us, like, what's the, because this is critical, we got, all this is, you know, not only kids' lives, but like what's our job now?
I would ask that we be clear on whether or not the district is going to pursue the development of an inclusion policy. That would be very helpful. I'm not necessarily submitting that we cannot become an inclusive district without a policy. But as Mr. Bornstein indicated, we were able to leverage the tenets of the response to intervention policy to really move the work forward in a way that was effective and systemic. So that would be one way I think that I would look to the board for some support.
And I would add, to shift those numbers, we're going to have to, this has to be part of our continuous improvement efforts. And that's going to require some resource reallocation, some additional focus and human capital efforts in some areas. We've talked about the teaching learning framework, PLC work, and human capital work often. This work needs to be embedded in each one of those hedgehog concepts. So as we're going into the budget process and season of sorts, how we build our budget may be in response to some of the numbers we saw here, and some of the other numbers you're going to see in the coming weeks around achievement for all students. So that's going to be the board's work from my perspective on how we build a budget, how we move through this continuous improvement process, how we adjust or shift our Board of Education priorities in the coming years is where I'm asking. So we have to do some things. We have to think differently, Mr. Anderson, to shift some of these numbers that I heard from some folks today. And that's going to take a community-wide effort, because some of the things that we need to do, from my perspective, to change these numbers are going to be those tough decisions we're going to have to make as a leadership body and a governance body that are going to be unpopular for some, and they're going to be very popular for others, and we need to understand it and move in that.
When are those coming down? Is that kind of budget time, or are those?
It's going to be a year-long process, but budget is going to be in place. As we build the budget, we may reallocate resources or put in front of you a proposal to do some things that will be innovative, to provide some additional support here and in some other areas that we're struggling as an organization. But very few new dollars. That's going to require us to think differently and stop doing some things that aren't producing results, academic achievement-wise, some things that we've been doing for a long time that we can't speak to other gains from, programs. Some things we're going to stop doing, and we're going to have a deep understanding of what we're trying to do, also an understanding of the things that aren't working in order to make those tough decisions.
That's always been the issue, is we continue to look at children with disabilities and how to best deal with the issue, how best to educate those children, and we still don't see the needle moving. So we review, we try something else, or we add another layer, or you could have gone into much more detail on what we do in this district, and so I know we do a lot. Our classification rate is higher. We put significant dollars to special ed, and so what's it going to take? I mean, that's what we're at the point, what's it going to take to actually start to move?
And I will add again, we know what it takes. I mean, there's research out there, there's best practices out there that show how to move these numbers. But as a community and as an organization, are we ready to do some of those things, which are going to be tough decisions to make, and oftentimes they're going to be unpopular. Inclusion policies, yes, the research shows that it works, and it will increase achievement for all students. But that has many, many consequences associated with it. For some folks are negative, some folks are positive. So that's the conversation we're going to have in the coming year about what we want to take on and how quickly and how many resources we need to put in. If we want to confront it real fast. In education, not just with this issue, but with all the issues, we know what it's going to take to move achievement. It's just which organizations are willing to do those things and at what cost.
And I would add that, to give you a primary example, Rob, that we really have to change our culture around our pre-K students. Again, as of July, I'm in charge of early childhood, and when I look at the number of pre-K students that are being classified, and then when they become school age, continue the classification, it's unacceptable. And it's actually inappropriate, the number of students, the percentage of students being identified at the kindergarten level.
So you're saying they're being classified when in fact they should probably not be classified at such an early age, and once they are classified, that they're not declassified.
Right, and part of that is because...
I mean, no, I'm saying, is that what you're saying?
I am saying that. I am suggesting that, and I'm suggesting that it needs to be a culture shift in this district around understanding a developmental gap and an education experience gap.
Sure.
And again, allocating those resources at K-3 so that the parents in this district perhaps don't feel like they need to classify their child as speech impaired in order to access the speech therapist. That's a culture shift.
Brett first.
Yeah, I mean, I've had conversations with Connie previously about the monthly report we get on special education students, and one of the things that's not there is an exit plan.
Yeah.
So once classified forever. There's not we hope to have them out in 6 months, we hope to have them out in 2 years. It's not mentioned. It's just not part of the process.
Okay.
And along those lines that Brad's mentioning, I'm wondering, and Tim Moon might be able to tell us, if children, it would be interesting to see a report. I know in the past we've gotten a report about sort of annual classifications and how many have been classified in a year, how many have been I don't know if it's unclassified or declassified. Declassified at the end of the year. But it would be interesting to see by what you mentioned, Connie, it'd be interesting to see actually to break it down by grade, to have that kind of data to see when they're is there any trends happening in classification or in early and so on, and break it out and track it through time. Because maybe that isn't helpful, but I don't know.
So, Jay, just to your point, we are doing that. Mark Jasinski, Sheila McHenry, Janet Roscoe-Strabel, and Lisa Harris and myself, again as a PLC team, all instruction on the side of curriculum instruction side of the house, taking a look at exactly those things. What is the highest rate of, well, yeah, K-3 is speech and language impaired.
Are we breaking it down like we broke down the math by gender?
I haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay.
So that's information that's it's been given to us, it's coming to us?
It's something that, again, as a group, we began to look at to try to really, in a data-driven way, create a systemic plan.
So you're at the beginning of this process.
To reduce the rate of, as of September, in our goals that we've outlined for the group.
So in some time you might share that with us?
Absolutely.
Yep.
So I don't know when it was, but we had meetings throughout the years. I could remember Sheila McHenry coming up and talking about a culture shift. She didn't use that word, but that kind of idea of this is what we do, people are used to this, and then I hear it kind of coming up again, and then when I look at what I want to do as a board, I don't know that we get down to the level of culture shift, but I don't know if the culture needs to be shifted, what, I mean, is the plan
Right,
that
right,
you
so
guys shift, like, you put a rule in place that we will shift, like, I don't know what that means, and it's hard for me as a board member to say, you know,
I understand
go
what
ahead,
you're
shift it, but like,
Right.
Well,
you know,
so exactly. I mean, so, you know, what does it take?
because this is critical,
What does
like,
it
every
take to
year.
move? What does it take to move teaching and learning in the classroom? You know, regardless of whether a child is classified or not. Well, okay, you're declassified. Are you going to be able to graduate with a Regents diploma with the higher standards that are coming down from the Board of Regents and the state ed? I mean,
Can I answer this?
you can talk, Dr. Brown.
I think I have a perspective. Policy, litigiousness, and controversy were things that help shift cultures. We're going to have to go through some growing pains on this one. I don't know how much has happened to this point. I don't see much. There isn't a policy right now that's going to shift this. We aren't fighting about this in courtrooms right now.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, we have these conversations every year, but how many folks how many work sessions have we had in which we're debating this issue? So over the next year or two, I'm hoping to get involved with all three of those things if we're comfortable to have a safe conversation. Because, again, the decisions you make are going to have intended and unintended consequences, positive and negative, even for me. So if we're willing to go this route and have this policy conversation and along with the tough conversations that are going to be controversial, and at some point there may be some litigiousness, right? Am I saying it right, Dr. Myers? Because you taught me that word last week.
You're not suggesting that. Well, okay. You're not suggesting that folks in the community sue the board.
No, not at all. But I'm just trying to take a picture that it can get serious. And when we talk about culture shift, I'm thinking about APPR right now and how our commissioner said a few weeks ago that that's shifting a culture. And that most times when you shift cultures, it gets caught up in court. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Some things that we all could say are good for teaching and learning and good for children, but yet it's caught up in courtrooms and legalities because it's changing the culture. So I'm just being as honest as I can around this issue. Hopefully we can engage in these conversations this year.
Can I say something about policy too? I just think it's important to note that part of the tenets of the response to intervention policy in this district already cover some requirements around classifying students in New York State and across the country. Right? The initial classifications or initial requests for classifications must be accompanied by documentation around how you try to support the student in the general education classroom, how you progress monitored for specific intervention or specific strategic instruction that would promote achievement in areas where the student is demonstrating a deficit, right? And so some of the things that we've begun to do, Janet and Sheila and I, is to look at those initial referrals, right? And, they can no longer say things like, I don't know, the student has access to math instruction. It has to be specific. It has to be progress monitored, or else it has to go back to the committee and to the classroom teacher to really share with us, again, the instruction that was tried and the gains that the student made or did not make.
I'm on the understanding, and I could be totally wrong, that in order to proceed with inclusion, you do not need a district policy. In fact, there are very few districts that have a policy that specifically talks about inclusion. We tried to get one from NISBA so we could use it as a template. And we were told that. Now we're waiting to see what NISBA does with our policy both before we go on. But that was my understanding.
That's very true.
Not,
That's very true.
Yeah.
We're also the only district in the state that has a response to intervention policy.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of
And we
districts
don't
that have
need to have that
full,
either. Yeah.
because it's mandated by the state, full implementation of response to intervention.
Yeah.
So you're right about that, Judy.
Yeah.
Can I just speak for the board, even though I haven't spoken to any of my fellow board members? But we're clearly prepared to confront and do the things that may require a culture shift if it's good for our students. I mean, and we're prepared. I mean, that's the dialogue we want to engage in, and those are decisions we want to make that are good for students. And if it if it's difficult and requires a culture shift and hard conversations and education, and I mean, that's what we're here for. And you know, if we all recognize we need a culture shift, then let's get to shifting culture, because if it's going to help our kids, then the board and whatever role we play in that, I mean, I think we're all about doing that kind of, and I know it's hard work and it takes time, but we're ready. I mean, Dr. Brown, we're ready.
Part of this is building an awareness, you know, that you may get phone calls around, you know.
I have a phone and unlimited minutes.
Yes.
And, you know.
I'd like to add to that. Are you just talking about the inclusion?
No, let me be clear. I'm not talking, I don't know if the culture shift is a shift to inclusion. I don't know that, but I'm hearing that the
But I'm
culture
talking
shift.
about math, reading, and everything else.
Whatever it is, whether it's this inclusion idea, whether it's a high, I don't know what it is, but that's why our fine educators are gonna bring it to us and make it happen. I mean, let's shift cultures. If it's good for our students, then let's figure out what those things are, and if that's where the work is, let's get to it. I mean, that's why we're here.
But at some point, we'll find out what we're shifting to, right?
Or front.
I'm hoping that the upcoming work sessions will help inform that. I know we have one just around special education coming up in the coming months. And so some of these issues we brought up tonight will be topics for us to have deep conversations about. We'll bring the research, we'll bring the practices that are happening throughout the district or aren't happening, and we'll talk about it. And coming out of those work sessions, those work sessions will inform recommendations from staff to you. This is just the first part of this culture shift. We won't solve it all tonight.
All right.
As we shift to the next topic, which I guess we're going to do right now, Josh, did you have a privilege of the floor?
Well, that's
briefly,
very generous of you. Yeah, very briefly. You don't have to have a policy. I would say you get to have a policy. I think Ithaca could be in the lead, frankly, for the state and frankly the whole country. I think when it comes to APPR, I think teachers will have a right to know that their district expects them to teach inclusively. They'll have a right to have that be very, very clear, that if they're going to be judged on 40% on the performance of their kids, the expectation is that that's going to be done inclusively. I think they have a right to know that. And I think that if you want to know how to make a culture shift, frankly, Ithaca has made a good culture shift around RTI in the last few years. And the model we use for that worked real well. And I won't go on about how that goes. You folks know, and you can talk with Connie and Dr. Brown about that. But we know how to do this. We've done it. We could do it again. We could frankly be in the national lead. There's no reason we couldn't be. We've got all the pieces together. We just haven't done it.
Thanks, Josh. Just wanted to tie it up. That's very good. So I think we're on to
Common Core.
Common Core curriculum. Is that what we're Common Core standard? These are standards that are coming from, not from us, but from someone else, apparently.
The national approach to what we should be teaching. Gentlemen, you're here.
How about that?
If there are folks that want to take off, if you could do that like right now, or if you want to stay, that's great. But that's great. And we will.
Once you get past the taste of the night.
Did I hear it? I mean, what's that confused?
Sorry,
Okay. On to national standards for what we should teach locally. Is that what we're talking about, Dr.
Frankly, so well, I was ready to go.
Now, I always thought there was local control over school districts, and I thought that was our system, but apparently the national education folks, those folks at the national level feel that they have the say in what we teach locally. Is that what's going on, Connie?
$200 and maybe $20,000 will buy you, right? So you asked me to Mr. Ainsley specifically asked me to give an update on the Common Core and implementation of the Common Core in our district. And I really felt like I needed to sort of back up just a little bit and give you the bigger picture, because it's bigger than just the implementation of the Common Core learning standards. It is intertwined with the impact of the race to the top, with New York State accepting, right, the race to the top funds. And so,
And Connie, if I could interject, I mean, we've heard a lot about APPR. I mean, that's been a hot topic. But, and with Race to the Top, APPR, you know, the impacts on districts across the state, in New York State, winning Race to the Top, I guess winning is the word they used. But the other piece of that, which I feel has been, well, really has not had much focus on it, are those Common Core standards, that Common Core curriculum that is also has to be implemented at each district.
Yes. So I promise not to spend any time on the other pieces.
Okay.
I'm going to focus on the Common Core.
Do they supersede New York State's?
They are the New York State standards. Okay.
So there you go, Connie, go ahead.
Okay. So again, Common Core means that all students will be college and career ready. And you might say, oh, well, weren't the New York State standards about kids being college and career ready? Well, they didn't get us there as a state. As you can see, nearly a quarter of the students in 2-year and 4-year institutions had to take remedial courses. In other words, they took an entrance exam and they didn't score high enough to qualify for a course that was a credit-bearing course. Remedial courses are 0 credit-bearing courses, and so we had, you know, parents across our state sending their kids to college and having to pay the same, right, fee for a course where their kids weren't even earning any credit. So what do we mean by college and career readiness, and why is it equivalent in the mind of New York State and many other states that have adopted the Common Core learning standards? We mean that it will pay enough to support a family, that there'll be clear benefits provided for the job, an entry-level job that a student would get graduating from high school, and that it offers a clear pathway for career advancement. So when kids graduate from high school, they'll be ready for a job of this stature, or they'll be ready to enter college without having to take remedial courses. Work has changed over the years, right, Mr. Ainsley? Maybe. So
Yes,
we've
it
moved
has.
from non-routine manual labor from the 60s to non-routine interactive work, right? Work that really requires kids to be thinking at those higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy that we talk about in our teaching and learning framework, where they have to apply, synthesize the information and apply it in a work situation. Why focus on college and career? Because for the past, the 7 of the top fastest growing occupations require a post-secondary degree, and you can see them there for yourselves. Other than home health aides and personal and home care aides, which perhaps could lead to job advancement. And I know plenty of people in these careers that are covered by benefits. Other than those 2 on the list, they all require college degrees. So Race to the Top, there were 4 assurances that states made when they signed up to accept the money for Race to the Top. And one of them was to adopt the Common Core learning standards for their curriculum, to be aligned with in their local school districts. As you mentioned, there were other pieces to the Race to the Top initiative, including the APPR piece and building data systems that would help us track student success and measure teacher performance. So the timeline for the Common Core learning standards, and I'm going to get into the shifts that the Common Core present, are listed here. So for this year, the assessments that the state will give are based on the 2005 New York State standards. And so there is this year of time for implementation of the Common Core Learning Standards, where we are training our teachers to have a deep understanding of the Common Core and what that means in terms of changes in the curriculum and changes in their instructional practices, and we haven't seen that, right? So the shift really for the Common Core is a shift from focusing on teaching to focusing on student learning. If I had to really sort of identify an overall shift that the Common Core represents, that would be it. It's a shift from teaching to learning. 2012-2013, the student achievement expectations are based on the New York State Common Core Learning Standards. And so the assessments that the state will insist that we participate in, for the most part in terms of our schools in the district, will be aligned with the Common Core. And they're moving towards the PARCC assessments for 2014 full implementation.
What are those?
Partnership for assessment.
All right, what are they?
The park assessments?
Yeah.
They're a national assessment.
Yeah. They're based on international benchmarks.
They're based on the Common Core standards, and they're good assessments. They're going to be computer-based and adaptive. More information will be coming, but there is a consortium that's going to be spending the next year and a half building these exemplars for assessments.
Are we moving away from multiple guests?
Yes. And I can tell you most, I've sat down with a few of the folks who have helped them develop this, and they are going to be up high level. They're going to be sharp.
So it's not out there yet?
No,
Not yet.
So when do we have to start taking them?
12, 13?
2014, it's, they will be fully operational, but they'll be field testing them before then.
I assume we want to be part of the field test.
And we can do that without the park folks.
Right.
We know, and that's something we can talk about later. There's some New York City's one, and there's some other progressive school districts who are developing RFPs to send out for to companies who've already developed some park-like assessments, performance tasks. And some of those school districts are looking at 20% locally measured assessments as part of the new APR. If you're truly going after performance assessments and critical thinking assessments and skills, then there are folks out there who are developing those assessments now. So that's just something that's happening, and folks are thinking about it in the Common Core, and also implementing APPR, some of the requirements around that.
So just so you know, New York is one of 51 states, and I think that's even higher now.
We have more than
Well,
51
actually,
states.
that doesn't make any sense.
States and territories.
Oh, sorry about that.
Areas?
Let me just say, there are only 5 states left that have not adopted the Common Core Learning
It says
Standards.
states and territories, so Guam and Samoa are already in.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, Puerto Rico.
So again, when we accepted the Race to the Top money, we agreed to align all of our curriculum with the Common Core Learning Standards. States have the choice of adding up to 15% more standards as judged necessarily, and New York State chose to add those standards at the pre-K level. So that was the only sort of wiggle room, so to speak, once you signed up to accept the money. That's just a visual on the states. Texas is still holding out, as I understand it. So I want to get into a discussion about the shifts, what the Common Core represents in terms of shifts in curriculum and instruction, and I'm only going to speak to ELA and math because that's where the state is mandating us to focus our efforts. So pre-K to grade 5, balancing informational literacy texts. What I would say about this is that when you look at the kind of texts that elementary students have been engaged in most of their instructional time in the past, it has been narrative. And now the state is calling for in the Common Core that they be engaged in expository text 50% of the time. Right, so that they are engaging in learning vocabulary that is content specific and that they are learning from that vocabulary. So it is specific to science, for example. A word like crustacean, this is my 5-year-old word lately, that they would know what that means, right? And they would know that that's a scientific sort of label for something that lives in the water, I think.
I've been told that it's a move away from literature. I mean, I like Charlotte's Web, frankly, but more toward textbook reading, more
Well-
science-based or reading a textbook as opposed to reading for information rather than reading Charlotte's Web. I mean, E.B. White was a tremendous writer, but anyway, go ahead. Cornelian?
Mr. Ainsley, I'm going to continue. Shift 2, knowledge in the disciplines, expectation of a rigorous domain-specific literacy instruction outside of ELA, again, to your point. So these literary experiences are not meant to replace the narrative experiences that students, again, were typically engaged in the past, but to boost their ability to understand vocabulary that they may not see in a narrative experience. Staircase of complexity, again, we're still with ELA here. So this is actually closely related to the discussion we were having about special education, but we have to document and demonstrate growth over time in terms of students' ability to read, right? And so the Common Core standards for ELA really mandate that we show evidence of instruction that helps children reach grade level reading. So I can just being reflective about being a special educator, for example. I know one of the things on my team that I was often asked to do was to rewrite a particular text, right, or find an alternate text for my students who were not reading on grade level, whether they were identified as students with disabilities or not, right? So we no longer can do that. That the Common Core is saying you must teach kids how to read difficult text, right? You can't replace it with, I shouldn't say you can't, but the Common Core is asking you to not do that. The Common Core is asking you to develop instructional strategies that teach children how to read difficult text. So that's, developing background knowledge, more work on vocabulary and so forth. Okay? So shift 4, text-based evidence, shift 5, writing from sources, and shift 6 really speak to a student's ability to use the text to have primary source documents that support an argument. That's really what shift 4 through 6 is about. Can they make an argument? Can they make a claim? And can they support it and find the evidence in the text? Okay.
I just noted that everyone will become a historian if they should cite primary sources and build an argument, and I'm all for it.
You're all for it. Okay.
At least Pat's happy anyway.
I'm going to move on to math now.
Right.
And there are 6 shifts in math: focus, coherence, fluency, understanding, application, and dual intensity. So focus really talks about narrowing the amount of topics that we cover, particularly in the earlier grades, and that we go deeper so that kids gain an understanding of math conceptually, fundamentally, right?
Connie, we hear a lot about a mile wide and an inch deep.
Yes.
Is that what we do now?
Yes.
And that's not what we should be doing.
Right.
Should we think of what, did we think that's what we should have been doing all along? But now,
in our defense, this is what New York State was calling for in terms of the standards, right? And we were doing what we were asked to do by New York State. But now that we have this consortium and Race to the Top and people talking at the international level about, what is best practice in mathematics instruction, we see that other countries are not doing that, and they are making more gains in the math and scientific fields. And so I think in that case, we're taking a lesson from them. And so again, the shift is to focus on, again, early on, whole numbers, operation, and quantities. Shift 2, coherence. Each concept in each grade builds on what you learned before. That's not new to math. But they want us to help students understand how what they're learning in other subject areas relates to math. So shift 1, 2, and 3 are really about building fluency, or what they call automaticity in math. So when someone says 9 times 6 to you, 54 automatically, you conjure that up in your brain automatically, right? And so I know we did that.
Flashcards, I mean.
Right, we did that with flashcards and drill and kill and all of these other things. But our students are not fluent at an alarming rate, do not have this automaticity that really does allow them more easily to access higher level math. Our students in the state, I'm not saying our students.
Go first. Well, I mean, you use the simple math, and I see a struggle with